Hey guys, what is up and welcome back to my channel. As you guys can tell from the title of today's video, today I'm going to be going over a few of my favorite standalones. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Heard me speak about most of the books I'm about to speak about before, but I just wanted to do a comprehensive video. This was actually a requested video, so I hope you guys like this. But the first book that I have to talk about is a book that I just absolutely fell in love with when I read it, and I think that this might not necessarily be everyone's favorite if you are maybe a bit younger, because this book does have a lot of 80s pop culture references in it, and that would be Ready Player One. This book was popular enough that they did make it into a movie, and I think that says a lot about it. I really like this book because I really love all the characters. I really like Wade Watts. I really like everybody in his world as well, like Parzival and, you know, his characters that they create from themselves. I like them as well because I do find that the characters are one set of them, and then obviously the characters that they create within the game are another set of characters. So I genuinely loved that. I loved the world in this as well, even though obviously it is quite run down. I do like the like techie kind of aspect of it as well. I thought it was done very, very well. And if you are interested in anything kind of like sci-fi-ish, I think you guys would really, really like this book. But what this does actually follow is Wade is just a normal kid. He just plays this game that is left over from a man who used to actually own something called the Oasis, and the owner leaves an egg within the game, and that whoever finds that gets riches beyond their wildest dreams, essentially gets to run the Oasis. And that is what Wade and all of his friends have kind of set up. Their life's goal essentially to do is to find this egg and become the owner of the Oasis. And the reason why that is such a big deal, like I said, they do live in kind of a really run-down, crappy world, and there are multiple people within this game who are trying to do this for very different reasons, and I think all of them are pretty admirable. But I just really liked the storyline of this. I thought it was actually kind of touching at times as well, and it was very, very funny. So if you like funny kind of sci-fi stuff, I think you'll really, really like this book. Now, while this next book is written in the same world as a few other books and is obviously written by the same author, I definitely consider this a standalone. If you've read any more of the other books in this set of books, you will realize they don't necessarily coincide, and that would be A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. This is such a good book. I think Becky does such a good job of making characters come to life and making you genuinely care about the characters as well. This follows a girl who's kind of running from her past, and she gets on like a freighter ship. Essentially, she becomes like their clerk, but there's a little bit more to her story, and I don't really want to go into it because I don't want to ruin that for you, because this is so character-centric that I think if I told you kind of why, it would be it would kind of take away from the overall story, which there isn't a whole lot plot-wise that happens in this, so I don't really want to go over that. But the reason why I think this is such a revolutionary book, because while it is sci-fi, I feel like it kind of reads as like a life book as well. There are so many good takeaways from this novel. There are so many different kind of characters from so many different kind of backgrounds. There are different kinds of aliens that live on the ship, not just humans, although there are quite a few humans. There's a lot of like moral, ethical, religious debates happening in this book as well, and I think it was so, so wonderful. And I don't know why it took me so long to read it, but I'm glad I have finally read it, and it is a book I will recommend time and time again. But like I said, there are two other books. I think the third one just recently came out, but I do not think that you need to read them in any particular order, and I do not think that they necessarily follow each other, because this book is a vast group of characters with one main centered character, and the second one is actually a breakaway of this novel with two characters that were in this that weren't main characters at the time. So I don't necessarily think that you need to read all of them at once. So I would consider this a standalone, and I would consider it an amazing standalone. The next book I want to talk about is a book that I'm not sure if I've spoken about before on my channel. I'm pretty sure I have. I think you guys know how much I absolutely love this book, and it would be Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This is an amazing book. This is an apocalyptic book. There is a disease that breaks out in the world, and everybody is kind of left. It's completely devastated the planet. Like, the ecosystems are down, the people, a ton of people have died, and people are left just to kind of fend for themselves. Now, the reason why I like this book is it's, once again, one of those books that really makes you think about right and wrong. What is considered right and wrong in this world, and with what they are left to fend for themselves with, what they have left to them. This book actually follows our main character, Kirsten. She is, when she's younger, she is an actor in a troupe, and then when the outbreak happens, she is just kind of left by herself to figure out kind of what she's supposed to be doing. And the reason why I really like this story is told from her perspective. I think it's very interesting because she's one of the people who doesn't necessarily believe in killing, but will do it if she needs to. And I think that her kind of internal struggle and her internal dialogue is what really made me love this story, because a bit of the way through, they actually find something, a man called the Prophet, who, when you decide to leave kind of his coven, he actually just ends up killing the people who attempt to leave. And I really liked this book because I feel like it's very accurate to kind of what would happen if the world was left like that to kind of fend for itself. So I think that's why I like this book so much, and I think it is such a great read. Like I said, I'm pretty sure this has huge review ratings on Goodreads because it is so wonderful, and I would definitely consider this more of a, I feel like it's a bit sci-fi-y, so that's kind of why I lump it in here, but I think it's just more of a work of fiction. But I did want to put it in this section because obviously it is a little bit apocalyptic as well, because like I said, there is a disease that kind of wipes everyone out at the same time. So if you've been wondering about this book, I think you should pick it up. It was such a great read. I believe I gave it 5 stars because that is how much I loved it. I read it in about a day and a half, and it was just so worth all of the time I put into it, and I always recommend it to people if they're looking for more of an adult sci-fi fiction kind of novel. Alright, so now I'm going to get more into contemporary, and these are going to be YA contemporary because I don't think that I really own any adult contemporary. Now, I could obviously speak about Neanderthal Opens the Door to the Universe. I will insert a picture here, but I'm actually going to save my time for that one because you guys have seen me speak about it before on my channel. I will link the video that I did up above, wherever it's going to be, for my review of the book. I really genuinely loved it, and I think you guys should definitely check it out. But I want to talk about a few other books that I think a lot of people will like, and these are definitely very popular books, so I think that they're pretty safe bets that if you're looking for a good standalone, these are the ones to go with. The first one I have here is Eliza and Her Monsters. Eliza and Her Monsters actually follows a girl named Eliza who does suffer with some anxiety and some kind of essentially agoraphobia tendencies, and she meets a boy online who actually writes a fan fiction for a webcomic that she actually does. And the reason why this is such a big deal is because people don't really know who Eliza is. Not even her family know who she is. So it's actually a big deal that he, you know, talks so highly of her and just really likes her writing and her, you know, her drawings, like the work that she does with the comic. But the kicker is she actually then meets him at school, and he becomes the boy that she kind of like befriends and tries to take care of. But the thing about him is that he doesn't necessarily speak very much. They start talking via notes in the very beginning, and it's because he has also lived a very rough life. The reason why I think this is a very good standalone book is I feel like it has a lot of anxiety rep in it as well. I think that it is also done very well. There are a few problematic things in here, especially the boy. I think the romance that they have a little bit later on with some of the actions that happens with him, some of the actions he takes, I think are slightly problematic, but I think overall this is a great book. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and say it, I wouldn't recommend any of her other books though, especially not Made You Up. From what I've heard, it's pretty terrible. I refuse to read it because I think that it's just, from what I've heard, it's just absolutely awful. You can look at the reviews on Goodreads, but this is definitely a book that if you've been wondering about and you've heard bad things about the other books, this is one that you definitely should try to read first. All right, the next book I'm going to talk about is going to come as a shock to no one, and that would be The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. Everybody is going to talk about this book when they do a great standalone. I'm pretty sure this is never going to have a sequel. I'm hoping it doesn't have a sequel, but either way, I'm going to throw it in here because you should read it with her. It's going to be a series or not. But this follows our main character, Star. She is a young black girl who goes to essentially like an all-white school, or at least there's only very, very few minorities there. All of her friends are white, her boyfriend is white, and she kind of has this internal struggle with trying to fit in but also being herself. Her friends like to make jokes. She has one friend that's a complete asshole, but this book goes a little bit beyond that. When she's at a party one night with her friends, it's just like a house party, and she leaves with a boy that she's known for a very long time, and they get pulled over and he is actually shot and killed, and that is what this book follows. It follows Star's internal struggle with kind of her life outside, like her life as an African-American girl in the world that we live in today and the injustices that I feel like a lot of Black Americans face. And I think that is why this book is so important. The last time I talked about this book, I got a few hateful comments, and that just makes me realize how much more important this book is. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this in here. I think you guys should definitely read it. Now, the last contemporary novel that I'm going to speak about is a book that I've talked about a couple of times, but I think you guys should run out, buy this book, and then run out and buy this author's other books, because I hear that the rest of them are just absolutely amazing as well, and that'd be Starfish by Akemi Dawn Bowman. This actually follows our main character, Kiko. She's attempting to get into an art school that she just absolutely needs to get into, but the thing about this book is Kiko is from, I want to say, an Asian American family, but not particularly. Her mom is actually Caucasian, and her mom likes to tell her and her brother, who are both obviously of Asian descent from their father, that they need to be more white, they need to be this, they need to be that, and they have a very tumultuous relationship with her. So when Kiko does not get into the school that she wants to get into, she's devastated. She wants to start somewhere new. She wants to find, you know, her own place in the world. And when a boy that she's known for a very long time actually asks her to come to California with him to maybe look at schools out there, just the story from there is amazing. She meets another Asian American family, like a truly Asian American family that I feel like is very comfortable with who they are, and they kind of invite her into their lives and sort of help her find her place as an Asian American. I love this story. Between the art, between the representation, I just think it was done so well. And obviously Akemi is an Asian American, and I think it's just as own voices, I think it's absolutely beautiful. And I would 10 out of 10 recommend this book if you were looking, if you perhaps are an Asian American, you want a little bit more rep, or if you love art, if you just love cute, but also kind of hard stories to read, I think that you will genuinely like this book. The only trigger warning that I have for this is there is a little bit of attempted suicide by a minor character, and I think that is something that people really need to be aware of when attempting to read this book. All right, and the last two books that I'm going to talk about fall more into the adult thriller / horror genre. These are both books that I absolutely loved. Some of them, one of them I read a very long time ago. One of them I only read like 4 or 5 years ago, but they have stuck in my mind so well. And the first one that I actually want to talk about is Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. This follows our main character, Libby. Her sister and her mother are both killed in what they thought was an occult murder, but her brother Ben is actually who it is pinned on. But the reason why I like this book so much is something called the Killers Club actually contacts Libby and says that they don't believe that Ben actually committed these crimes at all, and they are hoping to find enough evidence with her help to free him. And then Libby sort of decides that she wants to kind of use that as a monetary gain to hopefully make some money off of what has happened. Libby is an incredibly abrasive character, but I actually really liked her. I do love abrasive characters that are still sort of enjoyable in a way. I feel like they kind of have a place, and Libby is definitely one of those characters, but all of the supporting characters in this book are actually really cool as well. I don't want to give away too much about it, but if you're looking for a thriller that is not really what it seems, but kind of at the same time exactly what it seems, I think you guys would really like this one. Now, the next book I'm going to talk about here is a book by Stephen King, and it is one of my very favorite books by Stephen King. This does fall a little bit more into the horror genre as well, but that would be Do McKee, excuse the sticker. This is a very old book. This is obviously like the big mass market pocketbook paperbacks, but I loved this book. This is one of the very few books that doesn't actually happen anywhere in Maine. This book actually happens in Florida, in the Keys, and I loved it. This book follows our main character, Edward Fremantle, and I really like this book because essentially all at once a lot of terrible things start happening to Edward. He loses his marriage, he kind of like loses a little bit more contact with his children, he suffers a horrible accident, and one day he just decides that he's done doing construction. He's like a foreman for construction, if you guys know what that is, and he decides, I'm moving, I'm picking up my stuff, I'm moving. So he moves to Florida and he actually starts painting. But the thing I really like about this are the supporting characters. There's a character named Elizabeth Eastlake, who is an older woman who actually grew up on the coast where he has moved, and she has a lot of dark secrets. But the other thing that I really like about this, aside from their kind of relationship that they have, is that as Edgar starts to kind of heal from what has happened to him, as he starts to kind of make amends with stuff, he begins to paint, and he begins to paint feverishly. He starts having like dreams and visions and such as well, and some of them are actually tied to Elizabeth herself. And the reason why I like this book is it gives me such a classic horror vibe. It's very creepy, it's very spooky, but it's not so much about monsters or blood and gore. It's just very creepy, and I think that is why I loved it absolutely so much. There's a lot of like rundown building. There's a point in this book where there's like a very desolate rundown building, and I just really liked the symbolism behind that. I think it was done very well, as well as I like the change in setting. If you do get bored with Stephen King's kind of like redundant settings, I think you'll really like this book, because obviously this does take place in a completely different location, but I just really love this book. I think that Edward is a very enjoyable character. He is also very relatable for anyone who has ever kind of struggled or gone through any kind of trauma or divorce or lost something in their lives. I think that this is really good. It does also have a little bit of like starting over in it as well, and I just really liked it. I think when I read it at a really good time in my life, and everyone I know that has read it so far has really enjoyed it, so I think you should definitely give it a chance. Alright guys, so that is it for today's video. Those are just a few of my recommendations that I have for you guys. I could obviously think of a couple more, but honestly, most of the books that I read are more series. I tend to really like series. I think there's a quiz or something that you can do that, or like a tag that's floating around here on YouTube that's, do you prefer a series or standalone? And I think I said standalone, but I think it's pretty obvious that I might actually like series a lot more. I thought about doing my favorite Stephen King standalone books as well, because there are a few Stephen King standalones that I think are worth mentioning, but I didn't want to bog down this entire video with them. But either way, I hope you guys like this. Leave down below your favorite standalone as well for people who are looking for more recommendations. But if you did like this, please give it a thumbs up and think about subscribing, and I will see you guys in my next video.